Thank you for your interest in the Retained Recruiter Show powered by iIntro. Before the show starts, I have a small favour to ask of you. Our goal is to provide you with the most insightful, helpful and practical recruitment knowledge and know-how from the best in the recruitment industry. If you like this channel and enjoy watching our content, hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as we upload a new episode. Thank you again, and as ever, we're rooting for your success. Now, time for the show. Hello and welcome to the 99th Retained Recruiter Show. My name is James.
And my name is Joe. I can't believe that. 99 shows. And we don't look a day older, James, do we?
You speak for yourself. There we go. Anyway, Joe, it is our 99th show. Hard to believe we're going to have a good look back at on our 100th show. But we're delighted today to be joined by Don. So, Don, thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. I really appreciate the chance to join you this morning. This afternoon for your time.
Well, listen, there's people watching this all over the world, Don, so it doesn't matter what time of day it is. You're very welcome. There's a little introduction for you, those of you who don't know Don. Don actually established a business called LowryHill in 2009 after a very successful career building and leading high-performing marketing teams across multiple industries, including consumer packaged goods, H.J. Heinz and Campbell's, managed services at Aramark, AM Law, 100, Blank Rome, and Investments Financial Technology Services, SEI. Today, Don leverages his diverse business experiences to offer LowryHill clients the perspective and commitment of a consultative business partner focused on delivering not just quality people and teams, but real job performance that grows businesses. Don, you're very welcome and looking forward to sharing the stage with you today.
Well, again, thanks for allowing me to join the show. Yeah, I wanted to share my story a little bit. I started out as a contingent recruiter years ago with a large franchise network. Probably about 10 years into that, was very frustrated with the messaging and struggling with differentiation, which for a marketing person is a real pain. It's a problem. I'd say things like, I have a database. I specialize in your market. I have a process. I was saying the same things everybody else was. And as a career marketer, I knew it was a big problem. It was good timing, though, because I could get out of my contract with the franchise network after 10 years. So I did, left them, and then I started casting around for some ways to differentiate myself. And I remembered back to early stage of my career when I was at Campbell Soup running Prego spaghetti sauce as the brand manager. We had started doing some advertising at one point. We've done market research. Our Prego spaghetti sauce was preferred 3-to-1 over Ragu. We put that on the TV networks. We were spending about $10 million a year in advertising. It did not move the needle. It was very frustrating. So we went back, worked with the agency. About a year and a half later, came up with a different approach, following a strategy called Demonstrable Product Differentiation, which, by the way, was what attracted me to iIntro in the first place. But most of the audience hasn't seen these commercials, so I'll just take 1 minute to describe it so you understand what I'm talking about. If you can imagine, close-up shot of 2 glass bowls filled with pasta. On the first bowl, we pour some Prego spaghetti sauce on top. Close up, it sits on top of the pasta. It doesn't run down into the bowl. You can see that it's thick, it's rich. There are visible herbs and spices. Looks really yummy. Pour the Ragu on top of the other bowl, and you can see it running down between the pasta noodles. So, no visible herbs and spices, not thick and rich. And the whole idea was we need to be able to show something to people that they can see with their own eyes, not tell them. It's not show and tell, it's showing, not telling. And the telling is what we were doing with the first commercial. So we started running those commercials. We had about 5 or 6 different versions of it, and the business took off. Ragu became so upset with us that they convinced the networks that we were up to some kind of trick because we had made their product look so bad. And the network made us come back in and recreate the commercial live in front of some of their legal staff to show that we were on the up and up. So we did, and we won, and we continued running the advertising, and it's a lesson I never forgot. So demonstrable product differentiation has always kind of stuck with me. So, 10 years in, fast forward right around COVID, when I left the franchise network, I was still a contingent recruiter, still struggling to differentiate, and ran across another applicant tracking system that had a client portal built in. And hearing stories about, yeah, that it was differentiating. They could show that so that the client could monitor progress in the search, see some of the candidates. So it's got me thinking a little bit, but I was pretty sure that wasn't the direction to go with that particular applicant tracking system. So I looked around for another 2 years, and one day, shout out to Mark Whitby, here he is talking about iIntro, and I think either you or Plowman, or maybe both of you, had been on his show at that point in time. And I got very excited about the depth of the client platform that was available with iIntro. So I said, this is something I've got to try. What I came to realize, though, as I got into it, was that it really wasn't all about the platform. I mean, the platform was cool technology, had a lot of benefits for clients, video interviewing, key competency questions, et cetera, et cetera. But really the point of difference, that was the way I was going to prove I had a point of difference. But the real differentiation was about started, I think, with the three levels of assessment, which originated with McQuaig. I think McQuaig brought that to the party. It's embedded in iIntro. And, it's really where the rubber meets the road. What clients are looking for isn't just somebody to fill a job. They're looking for job performance. And that's why I decided to go ahead and make that my headline. And you can't necessarily prove it, but what I do as part of my sales process is go back and I show some data, and we'll get into the slides in a minute or two. So I decided I was going to stop pitching, which is what I was doing as a contingent recruiter, and start consulting. I'd get to know them, get to understand their needs, educate them, recommend a solution to deliver the outcomes that I thought they would need. Better job performance. What has a candidate done for them after the first year, not just showing up for work on day one. Improve new hire retention, because you want good people to stick around longer. Lower overall cost to hire, because we were doing it right the first time. What do they say? Hire right or hire again. And less executive downtime so they could stay focused on the business. The whole iIntro process was about doing a lot of the work up front and then providing a workspace for the client search team to come in and collaborate, look at information, make decisions, decide who they want to interview, all of that. Compare that with, did one search for a VP of global digital for a huge public relations firm. His team, his HR team, had him personally screen 32 candidates for a director of digital marketing for the Chicago office, none of which came close to meeting his requirements. He was very frustrated about the process. When we talk about saving executive downtime, that's what we need. Let the executives focus on the business and let us do the work. So that's, to me, there's real value in this 3 levels of assessment. As I've been thinking about this, I had never heard of the 3 levels of assessment before I tied in with iIntro. And I think most of the clients I speak with aren't aware of the 3 levels of assessment, which means to me that they don't really have a process for interviewing. Everybody has a favorite question or a favorite approach. They're looking for something, but there is no legitimate structure generally to the way they interview, unless they're really into behavioral interviewing. Most executives are too busy to get really involved in that. The HR folks love it. But, it's not very practical unless you're there to coach somebody through, because people don't hire every day. And, so they're looking for just I remember when I used to, back in various marketing jobs, when I had to hire people, it was always kind of a pain in the rear end, because I knew I wasn't good at it. You never quite know what to say, and didn't have a strategy for the hire. And to me, that's what the 3 levels does. So we'll get into that in a moment. So James, what I start with when I'm cold calling or reaching out to the marketplace is I promise to share a strategy that's going to improve their interviewing, their hiring decisions, and candidate job performance. And I promise to leave this with them that they can use with their team, whether or not there's a future for us working together. So I'm trying to trade something with a little bit of value, hopefully, for their time for that initial meeting. And what's Once we're in the meeting, we review their hiring process, and then I share some relevant data to illustrate, how problematic the traditional hiring process is. And if we can cue up the first slide, we'll start getting into an example of that. I've got a lot of slides, a lot of market data. We're just going to show one example today.
Sure. Well, whilst I dig that up, Joe, why don't I think you got a question you want to ask Don? No,
Sure.
I'm going to figure out how to do this.
Yeah. No pressure, James. No pressure. I remember the first time we met, Don, and we were having a conversation, and we were going through the training program, and you every time I saw you and we were with people, I'd say, tell the Prego story, because I'd never heard it from another perspective before. I'd never heard it from a perspective of, talking about demonstrable product differentiation. And I think that's the key, isn't it? Because as you say, as a contingent recruiter, it's so hard to differentiate yourself when everybody is literally saying the same thing.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of the platform. I believe that I can take them in there and show them a methodology that delivers outcomes that they're looking for. Very powerful.
Don, can you see my screen?
That's a lesson that stuck with me for years and years.
Can you see my screen?
Looks like it's coming up. There we go.
Does it say leadership IQ, why new hires fail?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
So
pass the technology test.
With the flying colors. So this is an example of one source of what I call market data, this trading value for time. And we're beginning in the education process. I want to show the prospect some general information that says, look, the hiring process isn't working in general. Leadership IQ is a US-based leadership training firm, and they do a lot of studies. And in fact, I became aware of Leadership IQ again through iIntro, and I think there's a comparable organization in the UK that has similar data, actually. But this was two big studies. One of them was a little old, maybe back around 2012, 2013. It was updated then in 2020. And, 5,000 hiring managers interviewed, about 20,000 new hires. The second study was 1,400 HR leaders. And essentially the data says that of newly hired employees at 18 months, I don't know why they picked 18 months, but that's just the way the study worked out. Almost half of them, 46%, were considered failed hires at that point in time, which is a huge amount to me. That's not much better than a coin toss. On the other side, only 19% of the newly hired employees were considered high performers. So that was the first time I saw that data. I said, that's proof to me. And in terms of age of the data, one thing I know is human nature doesn't change that much over time. We're still dealing with croc brains. We talk about that in the sales process. People are people. We've got our behavior tendencies, and so I think this is very legitimate. So James, let's flip to the next slide. So of those 46% of new employees that were failing, almost all of them, 89%, almost 9 in 10, were failing because of behavioral issues. Had nothing to do with their ability to do the job. They were all qualified when they came into their jobs, with the exception of the 11%. But the 90% were qualified. So companies were doing a pretty good job figuring out who could do the job. The question was, would they, and how would they do it? Factors, traits like coachability, emotional intelligence, motivation, temperament. There's a big gap in interviewing, obviously, or we wouldn't be seeing results like this. So that's one of the pieces of market data that I usually begin the conversation with. We have a little discussion about that. How much of that are they seeing? Usually people will not have seen this data before, but they resonate with it because they've certainly experienced bad hires in the past.
Don, one of the things I think find fascinating about this, and I just want to sort of put it in a slightly different language, because the words got there are technical competence. The way that we look at this in hiring is most hiring takes place based on knowledge, skills, and experience. So we review the CV or resume. That's really what's interviewed by the client, and that's the technical competence part. And that's only responsible for 11%. So just over 10% of the hires that fail, it's because they got it wrong on a basic level. And recruiters, to be fair to all the recruiters out there, we're normally really good at getting that right. So even if we get that right, what I think this chart shows is that 90% of the failures, which is a huge amount, that's 40% of all failures, it's nothing to do with the recruiter finding the person with the right knowledge, skills, and experience. It's more to do with the fact that the recruiter or the hiring organization, or both together, they're not collaborating on looking at some of those behavioral attributes, which are the things that make the difference to success. And I think you're going to show us a bit more about that later. So I just wanted to reframe it.
Yeah, and in fact, I remember you saying at one point in time, we hire for performance and fire for behavior. This is the perfect example of that. So let's jump into the next slide, the 3 levels of assessment.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, I had never seen this before I started working with iIntro. And why don't we go through the 3 levels, I think, for folks that aren't familiar with it. So there are some interesting dynamics at play when we get into this when it comes to candidate assessment. And more often than not, it's our human nature that gets us into trouble. As I mentioned, McQuaig was founded in 1966. This came from McQuaig Institute. It's a well-established provider of psychometric assessments, recognized for helping organizations with hiring, talent development, and leadership. This is very legitimate. So when we look at level 1, this is all about first impressions, and we call this the appear to level. Level 1 includes things like appearance, manner and presence, expressiveness. You could even, be swayed by somebody who has prepared for the interview. They're very energetic. But it's all about the first impressions. And the reality is, it only takes 1/10 of a second to form a first impression. Our subconscious forms our first impressions for us. We're usually not even aware of it. And that means the subconscious is making the decisions for us, even though we don't realize it. And the biggest mistake that a lot of people can make is to make a hiring decision in a first interview based on level 1 attributes. So the most important thing to know about level 1 is that, with very few exceptions, these traits or these impressions that we have really have nothing to do with job performance. So right away, our bias, if we allow ourselves to be sidetracked, is putting it at risk for making a bad hire. And subjectivity usually wins out over objectivity. And so it's something you have to be very conscientious about. Even if you have first impressions, set those aside and continue on with the interviewing. Because what we're really looking for is we want evidence, we're collecting evidence to support a hiring decision. We're not just winging it. And that's a bit of a newsworthy element to some people because they really haven't thought about it before. When we refer to level 2, we refer to that as the can-do level. This is where we were looking at the kinds of information that usually appears on the resume. It's very easily observable. Skills, experience, knowledge, education, credentials, all the standard things. The companies are doing a pretty good job, 89% of the time, qualifying candidates as to whether they have whether they can do the job, whether they have the raw ability. As we saw earlier with the leadership IQ data, we only get it right about half the time. And when we bring it up in conversation with folks, most of the time they acknowledge that they do tend to hire people relying on levels 1 and 2. That's usually where interviewing stops, is level 2. So let's jump to level 3. This is a level that we call will do. To me, it's the intangibles. These are all the things, the traits that will affect why and how the candidate will do the job. And that's usually what distinguishes the really strong performers from the rest of the pack. All other things being equal, things like their attitude and beliefs, their motivation, stability and persistence over time, their mental agility and capacity to learn, their behavioral patterns. These are all factors that indicate how a person is going to approach the work. The problem is that they are intangible. You can't see them. They're very difficult to evaluate on a face-to-face basis. And so the interviewer ends up guessing because it's either too complicated to figure out, or they aren't aware of the tools that can help. Or worst case, they aren't even aware of focusing on this as an area of exploration for the candidate. I think most people who interview who aren't familiar with the 3 levels really don't have a structured approach to interviewing that works. And that's where this, I think, can be very, very powerful for somebody. So, James, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say something there, because it's the black line that's running up. It's the divergence between when you do it and when you don't do it, and you see that trade off in performance.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. I got that next.
Give me.
Yeah, that's next. So yeah, what the problem with level 3 is, most of the time the company will make the decision, but they really aren't going to see the result. They're not going to see the level 3 outcome until, a good 6 months, maybe as long as a year after the person is hired. It's too late. It's after the fact. What we want to do with the iIntro process and the McQuaig assessment capability is to make that level 3 determination upfront, even before the client decides who they're going to interview. And so it really dramatically reduces the risk of making a bad hire. And when you have that information up front, that gives you a whole nother dimension of questioning, another line of exploration that you can get into in terms of how they're going to approach the job, that makes the interviews much richer and much more insightful. So it really reduces the risk pretty dramatically. The second notion I have about this quality of hire thing is that that's really what people want. It's job performance, in that first year. And that's why, to me, the intangibles are the exponential impact on somebody's raw ability. So I have this little formula up in the top that is a surprise to most people, but I think that's accurate. Ability to the X being the intangibles, the X factor, is what really determines job performance at the end of the day. There's a kind of I'll call it a 5-star strategy for improving quality of hire. You need to be aware of and avoid the level 1 bias if you can. Make notes, but come back to it later and keep going. Qualify candidates based on level 2, which companies do a pretty good job of. But when it comes to level 3 is what we should be relying on to finalize the hiring decision. Because level 3 is where we should be making the distinctions about who's really going to give us the performance that we're looking for. So that's the strategy that I recommend to clients as we think about these 3 levels.
Yeah. Don, I love that ability to the power of X equals job performance. I think it's a really great take on the 3-level assessment. So well done on explaining that one out and just putting some more visuals on it. I think it's brilliant. Well,
it's true. And, I can hear a lot of recruiters thinking, I'm not going to guarantee job performance. My Lord, that's a huge risk. But the truth is that there are ways to do it. So let's see. If you look at these 3 levels, especially levels 2 and 3, it's a very easy process to establish a benchmark for both levels 2 and level 3. And by benchmark, I mean, for level 2, we're going to come up with a performance-based hiring job description. We're going to identify 5 to 6 objectives and key result areas that somebody's going to be held to deliver, held to perform against in their first year. And then we're going to, in the search process, the interview process, we're going to talk to folks about what have they done similar to these job objectives and under similar circumstances, because context is really important, when it comes to job performance as well. Somebody who performs very well in one environment may not do so well in another environment, different culture. So that's got to come into play. And the McQuaig process with the job survey and the word survey at level 3 is a benchmark as well. And what's fantastic is that McQuaig actually will do the match for you if we can just get the assessments done. So now we've got benchmarks at level 2 and level 3, and we're collecting the evidence to say who's going to be the best person to hire here. And come back for a debrief meeting at the end of the day, and we're in good shape. And beyond just the McQuaig matching process and the assessments, McQuaig also recommends behavioral interviewing questions to kind of fill in around the edges for motivation and some other things. So we've got really a soup to nuts process for determining job performance potential and probability, in my view. And that's how I pitch it to clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is all great. To us, it makes absolute sense. I genuinely, as you know, I genuinely think that this is a far cry from what a lot of end user clients are using. I absolutely agree with you. They're not necessarily the experts in how to hire or interview. That's our job as the recruiters, to work with our clients to educate them on better recruitment, better selection processes. So lots of information there. If you were going to a client and you were going to advise a client on what the best selection process was in order to assess at levels 1, 2, and 3, just as a summary, Don, what would that be? What would you advise that a client does with their recruiter in terms of the stages?
Well, I would advise them to let us work with them and propose a performance-based job description, which fuels the interviewing process and the questions. I would tell them that we're going to do the McQuaig assessment process that's going to get us to level 3 assessment. I would advise them to let me lead a panel interview with a number of the executives on the search committee for candidates so that they begin to get a flavor for how to conduct a performance-based interview, because they're not going to understand that either. So I'm really proposing that it's a turnkey process with me leading them through the process, and then presenting the information to their search committee in the form of the portal, the iIntro portal, the platform, and we're going to walk them through how to use that, introduce them to it, log them in, and say, here's the information. Now let's walk through this. And at the end of the day, after they've reviewed the information, they've decided who they want to interview. We do the interviews. And once the interviews are done, I want them to allow me to facilitate a decision meeting where we're going to come back together, go through all the scorecards that I gave them, because I would have given them information. Here are the interview questions that we're going to get to ask based on what we're looking for. Here's how we're going to score candidates through the interview process. And we're going to come back together and we're going to review all that information together. And we're going to look at the evidence and it's going to indicate who we should be making the offer to.
Yeah. And that's that consultative process, Don, isn't it?
I've got other slides that show that. I didn't include them today, but it's fairly straightforward at the end of the day. Yeah. Or, I've had a few conversations with clients to say, or you can go a la carte with me if you want. I can just do certain parts of this and blend it into your process as well. But it's important that we walk them through the process so they have at least a basic understanding of what's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
On this slide we've got on the screen here, it shows that what you're trying to bring to the equation here. You can improve the quality of hire, you can improve the retention, you reduce your overall cost of hire, and you're going to save time, which are obviously the benefits. Time, people, and money are the things that people are looking out for. And this,
exactly. So this is kind of my generic value proposition at this point. If you jump to the next slide, it will show a version of my value proposition designed for private equity firms. And I've labeled it a talent operating system, and it lines up from top to bottom. A private equity firm starts with an investment thesis when they buy into a company, and they have a value creation plan for how they're going to create the value to get their investment return from that investment. It's time driven, that 4 to 7 years. They've got a 100-day plan. They've got a 1-year plan. They have special things that they do each year along the process. And what we've done is align the role performance benchmark process and the role behavioral benchmark process, basically the 3 levels, or levels 2 and 3, line those up with their process for creating value. And at the end of the day, we want to give them a candidate. We're going to calibrate the candidates, do the evidence mapping. We're going to have scorecards, and we're going to have a performance aligned onboarding plan for the first 100 days in the first year, because the outcome isn't, again, the employee showing up on the first day. It's the performance they deliver in the first year. And PE firms are particularly aware of employee performance because it's all about protecting that investment thesis. They've got investors, limited partners, who are expecting return on the investment. And so they are very intent on hiring the best performers they can in the process. So that's just another version of the value proposition customized for one market. So
I think what you shared with people there, I'm just conscious that we're coming up to the end of our time in this sense. You shared something really valuable to people in terms of explaining how you work in the PE sector. And I think the thing that we want to share with people today, a couple of things that are really important. In terms of demonstrable product differentiation, in terms of how we do that, and that's the visualization of the recruitment methodology and process. Obviously, we work together with you at LowryHill, of course, with your business, and you've white labeled the process to be called iMatch. Obviously, we're a white labeled solution. But I think more importantly, how you then show people how you take some of those intangibles, those things which are not easily identifiable if you're not doing if you don't have a methodology. You've got one, so you're absolutely clear on this particular one. But then how you move that through, and I think to visually show that to clients, and the fact that ability to the power of X equals job performance. I think it's a really powerful proposition, and I hope what you've shared with people today is something they can take away, and obviously hopefully get in touch with you. We just flashed up your LinkedIn profile, so hopefully people will connect with you on that one. Joe, what thoughts have you got?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. I think that I mean, I'm sure you don't want to give your your recipe away as such, but I genuinely think a copy of this should be sent to every recruitment company in the in the land. It sounds so simplistic and so straightforward, and I think a lot of people listening to this will probably go, "Gosh, yeah, actually, this makes absolute sense." And also, a thing that I want to add as well is that as recruitment organizations, we should be using this ourselves when we're recruiting for ourselves. Because again, the irony is that recruitment businesses aren't that great at recruiting for their own teams. So yeah, even if you're not going to use this with your clients, to use something like this
just losing Joe there.
I think has huge benefit, doesn't it, Don?
Absolutely. It's all about, we've got to start making hiring decisions on level 3.
Go on, Don. We just lost you.
I think my biggest takeaway is the algorithm works, and we've got to learn to start making hiring decisions based on level 3, because that's really what drives performance, is those intangibles. And most hiring processes really aren't doing the job these days. So that's our goal.
Yeah,
it is our goal, and I think the reality is the reality is if you've got a multi-dimensional recruitment hiring process and methodology, you can help clients, employers in this case, make more informed, data-driven hiring decisions. And that's what we're helping them with, because typically in most industries, better data leads to better decision making. And there's no reason why that can't be the same in the world of recruitment. It shouldn't just be about how I found the CV or resume faster than anybody else, from my database is more extensive, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think you explained that pretty well as well, Don. So listen, Don, appreciate you sharing everything you shared with us today. Thanks for joining us on our 99th Retained Recruiter show. I hope you tune in for the 100th in 2 weeks' time. Because you may not know this, but you might have a starring feature, because I really do love that formula. So
anybody's welcome to use it, as long as they're an iIntro client. As far as I'm concerned, you have to have the 3 levels. If you're not using 3 levels, you can't do it. There's no way to do it.
Absolutely.
So Joe, congratulations on 99, and good luck with 100.
Thank you very much, Don. Listen, everybody, it's been a fantastic show. Don's been very magnanimous in sharing all that information with us. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do connect with him. Please do connect with us and get in touch with us. But for now, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time for 100th show. But it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from our great friend Don. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
My pleasure. Bye. Thanks for having me.
Yo.